The select board meeting will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Office of the AG webpage. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted. The town will persevere to use conference call capabilities regularly for other parties to listen in and participate accordingly. If not possible, we will post on the town's website an audio recording as soon as possible after the meeting. And I didn't click the recording thing fast enough. So this is the select board meeting for Tuesday, January 21st, 2020 at 6 o'clock. Why don't we get started by having a pledge of allegiance to the flag. If you could please stand and find a flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Okay, seeing how it's 6 o'clock, our first appointment is for Attorney Coyle. Has he joined us yet? I don't think so. Okay, so why don't we give Attorney Coyle a couple of minutes to arrive. And what time is the planning board scheduled on here?
Oh, I apologize. Can you all hear me?
6:30.
Yep. Doug, can you hear me? It's David
Yes.
Person here. Oh, yes.
Hi, David.
Okay. I apologize. I had myself muted. I'm still tinkering with things, but Ben is unable to make it this evening. Attorney Coyle asked that I represent Bacon Wilson in his stead. I was the primary point of contact for the short-term rental Airbnb kind of status in Southwick, so he thought it more appropriate that I attend this meeting and kind of speak a bit on that.
Okay.
So I'm happy to kind of get the ball rolling, unless Doug, you had something specific you wanted to say. Or
oh, I just want to note that that there's a horrible echo in this call today, but second is that I see the planning board chair and vice chair and the associate are with us already, and our building inspector and zoning enforcement officer Kyle Scott is also in the meeting as well. So, but the floor is yours, Attorney.
Wonderful. Back in July of 2019, well, effective July in 2019, the legislature put into place, or essentially passed a law that allowed municipalities to begin to regulate and zone short-term rentals more effectively. This was in large part a product of the lobbying of the hotel, motel, short-term lodging industry, who felt that they were missing out on, or that it was unfair, essentially, that these short-term rentals were not paying the same types of taxes that they were. So the long and short of it is, with the passing of this law, it allows the town, if we choose to not only start potentially collecting some form of Community Preservation Act funds, a small, for like a 3% of an additional tax on all of these Airbnbs that goes directly to the town. But additionally, it allows us to create some local permitting to allow for some more oversight of these properties. As we all know, more now more than ever, there are serious health concerns and issues when there are numbers of people in the community who you don't know that they're there. You don't know where they're from. There's no real current guidelines in place for sanitizing these lodging accommodations in between stays. So this really, the passing of this law really does give the town a lot more of an ability to start, regulating these types of uses. As it currently stands, While there are a number of Airbnbs currently in the town of Southwick, I think anybody who can do a simple search would tell you that. The bottom line is that the way we have currently been enforcing it is when there are problem properties, we have been sending zoning enforcement action letters because, as many of you know, Southwick is a prohibitive use town, which means unless a use is specifically permitted within the zoning bylaws, the assumption is that whatever the use is, if it's not outright allowed in the underlying zoning bylaws, that use is prohibited. So not only does this allow us to create a use category specifically for short-term rentals, as opposed to us just saying they're outright not allowed, this allows us to really not only allow them, but give some control over how we allow those short-term rentals. So to that end, I did provide just a very, very, very simple draft set of short-term rental bylaws. This is effectively a modified and revised version of Salem and Plymouth are both already have short-term rental bylaws in the books. I kind of cherry picked what I liked out of both of those two bylaws and made something that I thought at least was a good starting point for the town and our various departments to start looking at. And in particular, I'm sure, I know that Kyle is interested in being involved in this process. We touched on this briefly, but I know there are a number of other town boards that are likely going to want to have some input in this as well. Fire department, planning, as well as the Board of Health. So this is really just an idea of a starting point for us to start really talking about this, because I think the general consensus, at least when we discussed this last year, was that it was a good idea to have something on the books. We just didn't quite know what it was going to look like. So I think that this is at least a good starting point for the town.
Okay. So I see that we've had, I know we've had, Kyle, do you want to weigh in on this at all? Talk about this a little bit?
Well, I think it would be a good idea to put something on the books. I certainly know Attorney Person, and I know his record. I've dealt with him before plenty of times in the law firm that Southwick uses. I totally trust his judgment in this direction. You know, I would have a question as to what would define a short-term rental, how many days, but you know, I think the town is headed in the right direction to definitely come up with something. Previous communities, this is nothing but a nightmare.
And kind of to leave it open, as it's currently drafted or as it's currently written, the idea is to create a separate use category and not to create any sort of geographic limitations or any sort of overlay district. I mean, those are other ways that this can be approached. But, you know, ultimately, I think that would require more input, certainly from the planning board, you know, at the very least.
So in your mind, what would determine a short-term rental? Length of days? How many days?
Sure. So the law currently has a classification in place that effectively says if you're renting out your lodging for less than 14 calendar days in the year. So it's, you know, and they can be, you know, separated. They don't have to be all at once. The idea is that, you know, it's not a long-term tenant. You know, we're not trying to prohibit people from renting out to, you know, to 6 months, a year, whatever it may be, or even month to month. The idea is that if you're renting your apartment for, you know, within that time frame, then you are officially a short-term rental.
Sure.
You know, if you're doing it for shorter bouts of time, you're a short-term rental.
Okay.
So would the appropriate course of action would be to send this to the planning board for study? Because this does look like it's teed up as a zoning bylaw amendment, correct?
That's correct. And that's part of where this kind of begins the discussion, because there, you know, I think what makes the most sense, and the reason I think it makes sense to bring it before the planning board, is to kind of strategically decide which boards should really be weighing in on this. You know, I don't know. I know, for instance, that Board of Health is certainly going to want to have some input with respect to, I'm sure, what sort of sanitation might look like. I'm sure the plan, it depends as to whether this is going to look like an overlay or whether this is just going to be a general new use category. So I think my recommendation at this point would be to circulate it to, at the very least, the Planning Board, Board of Health, Fire Department, and obviously Inspection Services, and at least get their initial feedback. At that point, once I've gotten everybody's feedback, I can synthesize something that's a little more comprehensive and tailored towards Southwick, at which point I would present that to the Select Board.
I agree with that. Totally. Maybe include the police department in it also.
Police department. Yep. Great idea.
Is this something, if this is going to be something that goes into the zoning bylaws, is it better to do so through a planning board subcommittee and set up folks from the Board of Health and the Fire Department, and we can figure out who else, but and Kyle or whoever else is going to be on it, and just have that and they can certainly work with you, but sort of for process purposes, have it in that format.
100%.
Yep.
Okay.
I think it's very important to move it ahead. It's kind of like on a daily basis, you get some question or concern about this type of stuff. So.
Okay. So I guess we will do that. And I will send a note to, Chairman Doherty's here, so I don't have to send him a note. But you're going to get this, and then we'll let you establish a subcommittee of the planning board to work this into some kind of article for a future town meeting under the zoning bylaw amendment.
I'll text Megan right now and we'll put it on. It's the next meeting's August, 11, 12, something like that. Whatever that Tuesday is. So we'll put it on there. And
whatever you need me for, I'll be available.
Yeah. Thanks, Kyle.
Sure.
Excellent.
Mr. Chairman?
Are you going to remind me about the thing I forgot to do at the top of the meeting?
No. Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I had to step out for a minute. I had a little dog issue. But my question is, what are we going to do in the meantime with the people that are having problems where they live next to a building that's being rented out daily or for weekends, and especially during a pandemic? Are we able to take legal action to shut that down?
Yep. So Kyle and I did speak about that, and I think he's about to jump on and probably follow up as well. But the long and short of it is, yes, they are officially violating the zoning bylaw because it is
the prohibited use, town not mentioned, town not allowed.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's effectively, they're in violation, cease and desist, and then violations accruing every day for a continued violation. And there are appropriate appellate avenues for them. If they seek to challenge those orders, they're welcome to do so. There's an appropriate venue for it. But as far as our current review of the zoning bylaw, it's very clear that this is not an allowed use. We have not been enforcing against those properties where there haven't been issues. But that being said, as a zoning enforcement officer, the Building Inspection Services has discretion to enforce the zoning bylaws, and for these problem properties, they're subject to it. Unfortunately, Airbnb is not an allowed, short-term rentals are not an allowed use in the town of Southwick, technically.
Kyle, have you already taken action against that problem area that we got the communication on?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is it monetary fines daily?
I haven't moved it to that stage yet, but I will.
Thank you.
That party has kind of extended their ads to be more ambiguous sounding, like they're longer term. But I'm questioning the sincerity of the ads, truthfully. So.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions on this issue?
Nope.
Cool. Okay, moving on. I'm going to shuffle the deck a little bit because we're running a little bit late and we've got a couple of appointments here. But I also want to take a moment now to recognize and hold a moment of silence for Barbara Pooler, who was our former treasurer collector clerk who recently passed away. So if we could have a moment of silence, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Mike, is anyone else from the planning board coming tonight? Do you know?
I don't know. I can shoot a quick text around if you want.
No, the high-speed internet has a presentation. I just know I've been through the slides a couple of times, and it's going to take more than 10 or 15 minutes to get through it. It's going to be more like 20 to 25 minutes. So
I'm more than happy just to get through the associate member.
But do you have a quorum yet? 1, 2.
Do we need a quorum on a joint meeting?
Yeah. You can't open your meeting without it.
No, but it's a joint.
You still need a quorum. It's a posted meeting for your board. We have an attorney here. I could ask him, or did he leave already? Oh, he's still there.
No, you're right. You don't need the attorney here. Clearly.
Yeah.
It was posted for our board?
Yes. You should have posted it. The planning board should have posted it. We've got it posted here as a joint meeting, just like the high-speed internet is posted here as well for both boards.
All right, give me a minute.
All right, so do you want to make them, tell them not to rush?
Need me, or did you want me to stick around at all? I'm happy to do it. Up to you guys.
It's up to you. If you want to sit through the part about the high-speed internet, we're going to go to that next. And then we'll come back for the planning board, I guess. And then, because there is some finer points about having a captive light plan or whatever you want to call it. So if a question comes up, that'll go right to you. How's that?
All right.
All right. So let me. Is that okay with everyone else? By the way, Russ, Joe, is that all right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. So. The high-speed internet subcommittee was formed a while ago, and it was based on a reach out to us from the Westfield G&E. There was a development that was going to be constructed in Southwick, and they wanted to bring fiber internet to that development from a neighboring town. And we did a little research at that time and found out that you can't just do that. You have to have the right to do it. Even the G&E would need the right to do that in the town of Southwick. So the select board asked to form a subcommittee. We had a 5 or 6 member subcommittee formed of people who had, I'm proud to say, were never a member of a board or commission in the town of Southwick before. So we've met a bunch of times, and we met with the town attorney. We met with several providers of these types of services, and we did some outreach. And Alicia Sullivan, who's here, also an attorney, is going to wow, we got like 3 attorneys on this call. Is going to present to you a brief summary of what they found out, and as a report back to this board from that subcommittee for further discussion at a later date as to what, if any, next steps would be. Okay? Alicia, can you present this, or do you want me to present it on the screen here?
I can try. I'm happy to try. I have it pulled up on my screen if you want me to see here. It's not allowing, oh, here we go. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Do you still see just the slides?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. 1 second. Something froze. Sorry. Too much zooming today, I suppose. Okay. Doug, it might be easier. I'm having some problems with my camera. It might be easier if you present. I'll present, but you do the slides. Does that work?
Sure. Let's see what's the worst that happens, right? Okay. Now, what do you guys got it now?
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay, there you go, Alicia. Just tell me when to turn the slide.
All right, perfect. So thank you very much for having me. As Doug mentioned, my name is Alicia Sullivan. I am a resident here in Southwick. I am an attorney, although I'm not here as an attorney. I'm only here as a resident and a member of the High-Speed Internet Subcommittee. So as Doug mentioned, we did have over 10 meetings since October of 2019. We originally started out with 6 original members, one of which unfortunately had to resign. But the subcommittee consists of Doug as our chair and board liaison, myself, Marlene Quinlan as a member, Jim Johnson as a member, and Chris Boyd as a member. So since we sort of kicked this off last fall, we, as Doug said, met with town council. So we met with Daniel Kellick of Baker Wilson, just to discuss in part the steps that would be required to bring fiber internet to Southwick. We also met with Richard Carnell, a senior IT fiber architect at Westfield GE, just to learn a little bit more about the rollout of fiber in Westfield, what their take rate was, as well as to better understand the structure of fiber internet. And we've also had some informal discussions and meetings with other internet and broadband providers. Next slide, Doug. Thank you. The subcommittee was formed to explore whether the town could enter high-speed fiber internet to its residents and businesses, which would require the formation of a municipal light plan, commonly referred to as an MLP. That would really be the first step. So I'll touch a little bit on, our understanding of what that process looks like, very, very rough estimated costs that we've received. And Doug, if you want to move on to the next slide, I can go over that. So as it was described to us by our town council, an MLP would be its own separate entity and basically would allow the town to enter into interconnection agreements for the placement of fiber optic cables and related parts onto the actual telephone poles. The MLP is the mechanism that allows for bonding to construct or build out this infrastructure, and it has to remain in place for the lifetime of that infrastructure, so long as it's on the poles. And attorney, correct me if I'm misstating any of this. The creation of the MLP is going to require 2 yes or positive votes at 2 public town meetings that must be held within 13 months and more than 2 weeks apart. Creation of an MLP is not without any costs. So there are legal costs, posting costs, and the cost to create the MLP is going to largely depend on the number of poles in town. So we'd also need to do a survey to get an accurate count. The MLP is key here because without it, the town can only provide service to town-owned facilities. And it's our understanding, and we've been directed to sort of approach this to make sure it can be extended to all residents and businesses in town. We can go to the next slide, Doug. So in order to better understand whether this is something the town residents and businesses would even be interested in, we conducted a survey of the town residents. We've promoted it on the town website. It was also posted on several social media platforms, so like the Facebook town community pages. unfortunately, it was conducted pre-COVID-19, so it's possible that the responses would be slightly different, although I suspect the trends that we saw on the data would remain true even today. So we did receive 268 responses. It was conducted from January till early March of 2020. And I'll go over a little bit more in detail what the results of that survey showed. But all in all, the survey really reflected that the residents and businesses, I'll say residents because I believe we only extended the survey to residents at this point, but it really showed that the majority are satisfied with their provider, most of them having Xfinity, some having Verizon, but they're really unhappy with the costs, right? So, the costs are escalating. It can be very expensive just to have pure internet. I think it's upwards of like $120 just for pure internet through Xfinity. So while there was some other frustrations that were expressed in the survey, the residents really are just dissatisfied with the cost of the Xfinity service and other providers. So as we move forward, access to internet is really becoming more and more of a necessity rather than a nice to have. And it was important for us to kind of understand how our residents are using internet today. So you'll see there was several options that the residents could select from, how they're using it, whether it be communication, working from home, entertainment such as streaming or cable cutters, just, sort of web browsing, online learning. And then there was a couple other categories for people that don't have internet or use it for some other purpose. The work from home and the online learning were already pretty significantly higher than some of the other categories, but I suspect those are probably even higher now, especially with the COVID-19, not really knowing exactly when things are going to return to normal and whatever that's going to be like afterwards. We can move on, Doug, to the next slide. So as I said, most of the town residents have Comcast Xfinity for their service, a few others Verizon. Some are even using their cell phones to create a hotspot to browse the internet. So for purposes of the survey, I'll focus on the challenges with Xfinity and Comcast, but I wanted to at least note there were some others out there that people are using in town. Many residents, again, are satisfied with the service. It generally works. It's been pretty reliable, even with the strains that I'm sure it's been experiencing as more and more of us are working from home and getting our education through computers. Again, it really comes down to cost. The value for the money is just not there. The rates are constantly increasing. You get locked in for a year or 2 year period of time, and then after that it skyrockets. There was also some dissatisfaction with customer service. So just general frustration, contacting the 1-800 number, not, receiving the answers that they need, or, they need the famous last words, right? We need to send a technician out. So we thought about, what would the price point look like? And we carefully selected the price point in the survey because we didn't want to overstate it and we didn't want to understate it either. We really wanted to make sure we were sort of in par with what the price point is for the Westfield G&E product, at least, since that's sort of the product that we're comparing to right now. So we asked residents if they'd be willing to switch their internet provider or sign up for high-speed fiber optic internet for those people that don't currently have it, if it were less than $85 a month. And that's all in. So that's including taxes, fees, equipment costs. Overwhelmingly, the majority of them said yes. What was told to us by Westfield G&E, their initial take rate, and Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, was around 30 or 35%, which is really an extraordinary take rate when you think about the areas that they rolled this out to initially. So I don't think the committee was surprised to see that the majority of the people would be interested in an $85 a month package, especially since, again, your Comcast and Xfinity packages, you pay your flat rate, but then there's a $10 modem fee or, equipment charges and, service charges that you don't really fully understand. So that $85 a month would be all in, and that's similar to how Westfield G&E is doing it for their fiber optic right now. I think it's $59 or $70, and it's all in. Covers, you know, taxes, covers any of the equipment that you have. The equipment's updated every so often without an additional charge to the residents. So, you know, ultimately it looks to be cost effective here, especially when you compare it to the Xfinity Comcast pricing. Doug, we can move on. So costs for the sort of getting this off the ground, as I mentioned earlier, we'd have to do a survey, which would just basically inventory the number of poles we have. It would also look at where the current utilities sit on the poles and the distance between those services on the poles, and would let us know if any of those utilities would need to be moved to provide room for another service such as fiber optic. And in some cases, if the poles are just not big enough or there's not enough room, whether taller poles would be needed in some cases. At one point, an estimated cost of $60,000 for the survey was given to us. Of course, again, it will largely depend on the number of poles and the amount of sort of inventorying that has to be done. The actual build out of the fiber network to install fiber through the town, again, it would be to all of Southwick. It would be offered to all of Southwick, and very rough estimate to be about $8 million. We can move on, Doug. So as I said earlier, internet is really kind of proving itself to be a required utility. So if you look at the trends of some other utilities, there's a number of other organizations nationally that are embarking on assisting localities to bring high-speed internet to their residents. Particularly, we're seeing it in really rural areas that don't have any sort of internet, but also some areas that have internet, but it just, the residents for whatever reason are not satisfied. It's kind of becoming a necessity similar to your municipal water and electricity, required for school, work, entertainment. Some are even speculating post-COVID-19 that it could, even after we return to normal, whatever that looks like, could really change the way we work and educate and interact with each other going forward on a more permanent basis. So I think the committee's, at least theory on it, is that it will become even more prevalent than it is now, you know, and really become more of a requirement that homes have access to high-speed internet. Today, Comcast virtually has a monopoly in the Southwick area on high-speed internet. So even though we have, like for our electricity, we have Eversource, residents still have the option to purchase electricity from somewhere else, which is really not the case when it comes to internet. It's really Comcast or Verizon. But if you want the high really speed, it's Comcast or Xfinity. You know, we spent a lot of time looking at, you know, is this something that is going to be mandatory? Is this something that people are going to be looking at when they're buying homes and, you know, considering where they want to move their families to? And the evidence overwhelmingly is pointing to yes. You can move on, Doug. So all in all, what the process looks like. So following the town votes, assuming that it's something the town is interested in pursuing, high level, we would first need to establish the MLP. So we'd need to do the survey. We'd have to work with our legal counsel to go through that process. And then once that is complete, we would have to hire a designer, somebody to design the infrastructure for us, and a constructor, someone to actually build it out onto our poles. And then once we sort of have the infrastructure built and in place, we would have to consider a service or a network operator, so somebody to run it for us, some like a Whip City Fiber, Go NetSpeed, somebody that's going to take those calls when the service goes out, going to process payments, things like that. So generally, it looks like just a few steps. It's actually quite a bit of work. But generally, that's what you're looking at process-wise. So I kind of went through that pretty quickly. I'm sure there's tons of questions. I'm happy to answer whatever I can. We have Doug here. We have town council here. So I guess I will just open it up at this point.
And if I could just add real quick, the only thing that, one of the things that we talked about the most was that obviously we're not looking to put the town into business of being the provider of internet, much like the G&E has done in Westfield. They have the expertise, but the town of Southwick would not be looking to add a department to provide this service. So we wouldn't be adding on to the water department or the sewer department and have the internet department. This would be something that the MLP would have to exist strictly as an entity to be able to contract out to provide the service, right? So it wouldn't have employees, it wouldn't have trucks and all that stuff. It would just be something where you would hire a firm, and it could be a singular firm like the G&E can provide design, construction, and operations to a service. Or you can decide that to have G&E design it and another company operate it. But the idea is here is not to put the town into business of providing this service. It would just be the facilitator of bringing competition to this marketplace. And I know there was a lot of talk at the beginning of this, you know, and I personally have reservations and still do it in some regard as far as, you know, putting the town in competition with the open market. But that's, you know, this was what this subcommittee was charged to do, was to go back and investigate and come back. So that's what they've done.
I had a question. It's Dave Burson. Sorry, I turned the video off so you didn't have to watch me eat. So I'm just curious as far as, so the $8 million as far as the cost for construction. So I think, like, and I apologize because I'm not as well versed probably Dan McKellick in chapter 164, 43, which I think is, you know, the MLP establishing section. But I believe that there is I don't believe that the town's allowed to use, for instance, general obligation bonds for this sort of project. So was there a discussion just in terms of, you know, at all? I'm just curious as to.
No, not yet. I mean, what with G&E, not so much. I think there'd be there had to be a long-term contract with anybody. Talking to Go NetSpeed, they're not interested in Southwick in doing the build out in a town like Southwick. They're in West Hartford and several surrounding communities around their hub of West Hartford coming north. But they are, he basically said, look, if you build it or you finance it, we'll operate it for you, right? So his take was that the town would incur the debt against the revenue of this operation. And then, you know, we would just hire somebody like them. But there are other companies out there that will do it. G&E was the one that approached us, so obviously we talked to them first. But we did talk to a couple others. And, you know, that's one of the unanswered questions as to how you go and finance something like this, right? It's probably not a municipal bond to do it, but if it were and we're not, you know, you're probably more well-versed in it than we are for sure. As far as how you would finance, what legally you could do as far as doing it as an entity.
Yeah, and Doug, I think the difference, and maybe you remember differently, I think the difference with Go NetSpeed and West Hartford is that they're very close together there. Whereas in Southwick, we're much further spaced apart. So I think that was also a driving factor for them to not really want to come to Southwick, unfortunately.
Yeah, they just have a limited pool of capital that they're working with, and they're going for density, right? But our, I believe it was Russ Fox when we were first talking about this, and he related the experience with the cable company when they first came to town, you know, 30 plus years ago. It was a requirement of Continental or whoever it was at the time that they had to do the whole town. They couldn't cherry pick and go for density and then leave the outlying areas uncovered. And it worked out very well because now everybody in town does have the option for high-speed internet via Comcast because that infrastructure was put in place way back. I think we want to look at that in the same vein from a high-speed internet. If you're going to do fiber, you got to cover the town. It may not all get built out in the same week, but it needs to have a plan from the beginning to cover the entire town.
Well, and I didn't mean for my my question to be in any way a detraction from it. I think overall, I think it's a great idea when you consider the fact that, you know, what fiber actually provides, considering most of the internet provided in this country is running off of old copper lines. So
Right.
It's amazing to consider what could be done. So I mean, it's a great idea.
And just in closing, I think 2 points. One is that in theory we have competition for broadband internet. The reality on the ground is you don't. Right? We've all been involved, from the select board has been involved in negotiations with Comcast over the years, and the subcommittee that we formed to go through the motions of a negotiation with a firm like that. There is no other high-speed internet in our town that's available. The Verizon DSL is very limited and is being kind of phased out as we go, and it's very, very slow. So Comcast is it, and they work as a monopolist right now in the communities that they operate, just like Charter does in the ones that they do and Cox in the ones that they do. So in G&E's scene, when they bring competition to the space, is they have a great take rate. They provide great customer service. Comcast doesn't provide customer service worth a darn. You've seen survey after survey after survey nationally. And, maybe it'll just cause everyone to step up their game and drive price and service. So, and the other piece is that we're seeing as this kind of utility is becoming a requirement for someone to live. You're seeing it west of here, where the state is running all kinds of initiatives to bring broadband to places where there is not broadband, and services are growing up around it that didn't exist 5-10 years ago. All these over-the-top entertainment options, YouTube TV and Philo, et cetera, and then look at in the current situation we're in. 5 years ago, we didn't have everybody being able to join a video conference on Zoom over the internet, right? And the educational options and everything else that are available now because of it. And if you follow history as a guide, right? 100 years ago, you generated your own power on site if you were a company, right? And then they brought in a utility. You had your own well, then they brought in town water for some people, unless you live west of College Highway. But, and so on and so forth. So it's following the same kind of trend that we're seeing, and the same thing with telephone, that when they finally came in and wired for phones, those utilities, people would not buy a home that does not have the ability to have electricity. And the Greens in Southwick were the ones that first brought this in, but, they made an excellent point. They thought it as a value to the potential buyer of a home to have fiber internet. It would be a selling point. And I think this pandemic is proving out that you're going to see, if this persists, you're going to see more people working from home, more people working remotely, and not having to go to an office because they see the value in the productivity you get from that when you can do that. And it also allows people to live in places that they ordinarily couldn't live. All the cost of living east of 495, if you can not have to commute into Boston 5 days a week and you can work remotely most of the time because you have broadband internet, areas like Southwick and even west of here become much more advantageous and cost effective. So, any other questions? Okay, we'll carry this under old business for the Board of Selectmen. I personally want to thank everyone that was on the subcommittee for a ton of work, and also Annie, who's done a great job as a secretary for the board, and appreciate everything. Mike, you got a quorum yet?
I think he does, Doug. I see Dave Sutton has joined the group.
Okay, so then they got a quorum.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Sutton is on. I thought I was unmuted.
Okay, so why don't we?
Marcus. Yeah.
Marcus. Oh, where's David? He's here somewhere. Okay.
Yep. We're good.
Okay, so this is a joint meeting now of the Planning Board and the Board of Selectmen to consider the reappointment for the associate member. Mike, how's your associate member working out so far?
She is working out wonderfully.
She's in the room, so we got to talk nice.
Yeah. We never do in the meeting when she's there, but I don't know why we have to do it. No, Jessica is working out great. She's very thorough in what she does. She's always one of the ones who's going through everything and offering suggestions and correcting grammar and typos and whatever else. She's adding a lot at the meetings. We're usually having her in as a voting member on most meetings, and she's offering a lot to the position. So I would highly recommend reappointing her.
Discussion from the Board of Selectmen or other planning board members?
We're fine, Doug.
Mr. Dougherty, would you like to make a motion?
I'd make a motion to appoint Jessica Thornton as the associate member for the planning board for the next 1-year term.
Anyone want to second that motion?
Joe Didi, second.
Joe Didi, second. It is a roll call vote. So Doug Moglen, aye.
Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
Michael Doherty, aye.
Marcus Phelps, aye.
David Sutton, aye.
Jessica, I'm sorry to tell you, you've been reappointed for another year.
Yay! Now I'm going to Disney World virtually.
I wouldn't do that. Yeah, I wouldn't. Well, we'll repost for another one then. Don't go there now.
No. It's Disney Plus all the way.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jessica.
Good night.
Lieutenant Landis, are you still here?
I am.
I'm only 12 minutes behind. This is the planning
All right,
board
we're
here
good.
is causing me to run on planning board time.
Hey, Doug, do you need me for anything else?
Oh, no. Stick around as long as you'd like. We're good.
I need to head out, but if you
Okay.
needed me, I'm happy to stay around.
I think
All right,
we're good.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Sergeant Landis, the floor is yours.
All right, so I had sent you a request to review the current status of our auxiliary police unit, which is governed under the Massachusetts Civil Defense Act. And what we're looking to do is we've kind of we've never really had a role or oversight in their training over the years. And under the Civil Defense Act, it's the activation of the unit solely comes under the chief of police. And certainly, as you're aware of what's going on today, the types of training and things that we go through is, the guidelines are very strict. There's particular mandates. A lot will be changing as the time goes on. So we're looking more for us to play a bigger role in the day-to-day direction of the unit. I've had some recent retired police officers approach me about their interest in being in an auxiliary unit, one where the commitment isn't as large as what we make our reserve officers do on a monthly basis, but they'd be willing to work details in areas that we generally are short people and requires us to reach outside the community to some neighboring towns. With that being said, they are a volunteer unit, and we would be looking them to volunteer time throughout the year at some community policing events, whether it be parades, fireworks, things of that nature. So it's a give and take. We're not looking because generally everything is governed under civil defense. So we're just want to play a larger role so that we can utilize that pool, because again, currently there's approximately 3 members in the auxiliary police. And even though the chief has the power to activate them, the training that they have is not at this point in time up to speed with what the state mandates for training. So it leaves the town, once he is activated, I believe, a risk with regards to liability. So our recommendation is that if they were to come under our training program, that they would receive the same yearly training, minimum training that the full-time officers go through. So it'd be their firearms, CPR, first responder. Basically, right now it's 40 hours by the MPTC that all agencies across the Commonwealth are required to do. So they would be required to do that.
On their own?
On their own. That they would do that on their own. The only thing that I would recommend that we would finance is a lot of the training we do is online. It's through a company called MPI. And It's approximately $240 a person per year, but it gives you all the required training that it takes. And that training then they could undertake at home, at their computer, or come into the PD, do it on a computer here, but we would consider that under their volunteer time. And, but they would provide their own uniforms. I think right now, currently, the auxiliary, they do get a small stipend. Mr. Dunlap, I thought it was like $100 a year, but they would provide their own firearm, majority, all their own equipment. The expense to the town would be very minimal, other than what I believe the most important is their training. And that would just be for the membership of MPI. Their firearms would be considered under, they'd have to volunteer their time to come do that. And same as their CPR first responder training as well. So there's a large pool of very qualified people out there. They're just at the point of their or end of their careers where, they're just not looking to get into a cruiser so much anymore, but be willing to do, like I said, some detail work, some things that we also need to have done, and then to provide some volunteer service as well.
Does it go down the corporate ladder? Like, so, your full-timers are first for those jobs, your reservists, and then them guys? Is that how that
Correct.
works?
Yeah, and then from there, we would go out to Westfield, Westfield, the other departments that we usually work with when we can't get enough people. So they'd be third on the totem pole.
Gotcha. And you're talking maybe $300 a person to the town a year? And
that's still open for discussion. That would be max. We could maybe, if you were so inclined, we would ask them to pay for their own MPI prescription, but they nonetheless have to have it. They have to do that training, that minimum training. And, as this police reform bill comes through, depending on what it's going to look like, it's probably going to affect this as well, where some of the people that, like the full-time people that have retired might be okay, but some of your younger officers, it's going to be a whole different status, but that's up in the air. We'll have to address that as it presents itself.
Well, that's going to be, so what would be the next step for us to do? Are you looking for direction from us? Are you looking for?
I don't know that I need direction from you, because you are the appointing authority to begin with. And these aren't sworn officers. Everything comes under the civil, again, like I said, the Civil Defense Act, and none of this is changing. All we're asking, and we're not, I guess, we're trying to, it's more of a logistical way of operating with the auxiliary unit and emergency management that we would be providing their day-to-day direction. And that, we would, again, because the chief already is the only one who can call them to service, they fall under the command of the police chief anyways. It's just, we've never operated this way. And because, we're looking to do something different, we're just presenting it to you for input. But to see if you have any questions, because I'm not sure, the emergency management director, not that he had concerns, he shared a lot of this and thought it was very positive. One of the logistical issues that we thought is a problem is he would like to see the members be more involved on the SEMA, on the emergency management side of things. And those two commitments are, I think, too much to ask of one individual who's volunteering a lot of his service. And to be effective, it's usually either one or the other, especially the amount of training that's required to stay on top of this, to then also go to emergency management meetings as well, and then keep up on the communication side of things. It almost seems like these units should operate independently of us. You have your auxiliary police under civil defense, and then you have the communications emergency management also, but two separate units. So we've never, like I said, we never worked that way. And that's why a lot of people in the past haven't joined the auxiliary, because they were just looking for one or the other.
Do any of our surrounding communities operate this way today?
Actually, most of them across the state work under the direction of under the command of the police chief. And they look to, again, for the data direction. Westfield does it. Some places don't have auxiliaries, but all the ones, there's probably up to 20 across the state that I've researched, all of which come under the police department.
So an auxiliary police officer, do they have to pass the Intermittent Reserve Academy anyway?
They do, and that is a requirement. Again, all this is subject to change with police reform, so I'm really talking about, for the moment, people that's already been through it, or people that have had full-time academy and now retired from the job or soon to be.
Chairman?
Sir.
Could I ask a couple of questions?
Of course.
Sure.
Thank you.
Great.
Bobby, what are we paying now for details hourly?
Our hourly rate, I believe, is $50 an hour.
Okay.
Which is close to pretty much most communities in the area.
Right. So what volunteer work do you envision these people doing?
One of the requirements would be when we have like a public safety day, marching in a parade, maybe going to the schools, in addition to officers that we normally would put out a detail, we wouldn't supplement with auxiliary, but then in addition to what we normally do, we would ask them to come out, like give me the fireworks. Being that because of the COVID issues that we're dealing with, we didn't get to do a lot of the 250th events, but events like that. So, community oriented type stuff.
I know you said our emergency management director had some issues. I read as I read your letter. Have you had a follow-up with him where he now agrees with this, or?
No, what it was is when I sent in the letter, that was the follow-up. He had followed up with what we were looking for, with his additional, what he had liked to see, more involvement on the SEMA side of things. And these people, they're just not looking for that experience. Right. But, that being said, he has a lot of he takes on a very important role here with aspect to, our disasters and storms and things that may happen. So what I'd like to see in the program is where we do a lot of cross training, where the people do get, participate in some of his meetings. And I'd like to see some of his, some of our dispatchers be more involved in the communication sides of things, because it's a whole different band of radio. So it does, again, it's something we would continue to evolve, but it brings up a lot of interesting areas where the officers should know what emergency management is doing, what they're going to do, and because they're going to be involved in that type of an event.
Thank you. Very good.
And with this, would an auxiliary policeman be subject to the same other requirements as a reserve police officer, as far as like age limits and so on and so forth, or is that not the case?
I think that's something that we still would need to work, because under civil defense, I've never seen where it addresses the age, but that's certainly an important question to have, at what limit, before, if the chief is going to activate somebody. I mean, the role, of course, across the state, other than state police, for municipal police is 65 years of age. I'd have to talk to the chief in a little more detail, but, I think I would recommend we continue to follow that guideline until unless they were to change that for whatever reason. I don't know that it'd be a good idea to deviate from it, but that would be for some more conversation.
Gotcha. So what's our next step here?
As far as I can see, it's really, if you think that adopting this program is worthwhile to the community, and certainly I believe it is to us, because it allows us to tap into further resources with experience, gives us a little more flexibility. It's just, if you choose for us to explore this.
Yeah, I think my opinion is we should explore it. I think we have to get our arms around the monetary side of it, because right now times are really tight. But and plus there is the the opportunity for the auxiliary to be productive at a pretty significant pay rate. So we can look at that. I think that's something we should discuss in more detail, probably offline, just to see what's the best way to go about that, right? But there's also significant expense for an auxiliary police officer as well, right? There's a uniform expense, firearm expense that they normally would bear, correct?
Correct. So the expense to us would be extremely minimal. And the other thing too is, at one time when talking to Mr. Dunlap, I guess they had allocated, and I don't even know if there's a specific number, but they had 10 members at one time years ago. I don't know that we'd be looking at right now, because we have to be very careful of our selection process with regards to their experience, because when the reform bill comes out, a lot of people may not even have enough, the reserve intermittent alone may not be enough. So, we would be looking more at people that maybe have recently retired for the moment to start our pool, and just kind of see how this reform bill plays out. But we don't know when that's going to be adopted.
Gotcha. Russ, Joe?
Well, I think it's a good idea, but I think we need to get some more details, and out of respect for our emergency management director, I think he should certainly participate in this conversation. But overall, I think it's a great idea. And years ago, our auxiliary used to augment our police department. I know times have changed dramatically, but they were very useful.
And I agree, and that's why we would like to go back to that. And we did have a very, very, very detailed conversation with Mr. Dunlap, out of respect for his position. The chief and I met with him for probably over an hour discussing this. And although he's not opposed to it, from his seat, he's looking for to improve his membership on the SEMA side of things, because he could use the hands, and I totally understand it, and I see where he's coming from. And I'm kind of hoping that maybe, with some of our members, we might be able to give him a hand with that, as we move along. So, you'll see, as you see in my letter, again, it wasn't opposition. It was just, what he was hoping to add to the requirements. But with what's required just to be what's going to be a certified police officer, I think as a volunteer, that role just got to be too big. So.
Mr. Chairman, if you're looking for a motion, I'll make a motion that we continue to explore this and hopefully get something established before the end of the calendar year.
Joseph?
Hey, yeah, I'll second that motion. I think it's a win-win. When I first got on, I would always, bust the balls over there at the police department, because, right, Russ, the parades, all the stuff that we try to help and do in this town, and it's nothing against the officer. It costs money. And I'd always hear Westfield, we have a reserve group that, kind of volunteers some of that. And yeah, I think it's a win-win. I think it helps us. It's unfortunately that Charlie's world, it isn't as much in the police side as it is in the SEMA side, but you're right. Years ago, the police was a big part of that. So we got these guys that aren't 65 yet that choose to walk out because they're able to with their years of service. If we can still get 3 or 4 more years out of some of these guys directing traffic, it's a win-win. And as you watched all these productions over the last few years, and there's no disrespect, but you see sheriffs, you see everyone, these guys are scrounging to find guys to do details left and right. So I even hear sometimes over the radio how we're not going to do the detail because we can't get the help. So I think it's a win-win. I don't see how we lose on this deal, especially if it's a minimal cost to the town. So yes, I'll second that motion.
Okay. Roll call vote. Doug Mogul, aye.
Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
We just have to put a piece in there that any retiring chiefs aren't allowed or something. But that's all. That's the only thing I can see the problem with.
Sounds
Sorry.
good.
Oh, good Lord. Lieutenant, do you have anything else for us while we got you here?
Not at all. Thank you for your time. And, if you want to sit down, or if you have some particulars that you would like me to research for you, if you would get that to me, and then when we can get together again, hopefully I'll have those answers for you.
Great.
I just want to add real quick, Mr. Fox, I know you wanted that old salt shed down years ago in the back, but with the help of Lieutenant Landis today, the float is tucked in that corner. It does fit nice, and it's got a spot for the winter, hopefully.
Thank you, Mr. Didi, and I want to compliment Lieutenant Landis for the outstanding job they're doing rehabilitating that older building back there. Fabulous job.
New siding is going on tomorrow on our unfunded mandate.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Good night, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I'll open the floor to public comments. If anybody has a comment that they want to address to the select board, now's your opportunity. Okay.
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to speak as a public person right now. I know we're running a little behind, but
That's all right.
I would just like to talk about Barbara Pooler for a minute.
Please.
We had a moment of silence for her, but Barbara Pooler was like the rock for the town of Southwick when she served. This is years ago when we all worked out of that, what is now the police department, where all boards and commissions, town hall, the fire department, and school buses were located. And Barbara was our person that people went to on a daily basis, or called her at home, or stopped by and saw her on a weekend. And she did a tremendous job for the town of Southwick, and we lost a very good person. And that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you for that. Discussion items. We still have the deputy chief here and the chief, correct? Oh, we had the chief. I see we have the deputy chief.
Good afternoon.
How are you, sir?
I'm well, thank you.
So we have a couple of agenda items for you as well, correct?
That's correct.
And then the chief was going to come back for...
Yeah, he has
the
2
other-
items. I have 2 items as well.
So, good. So do you want to carry the first one first for
Certainly.
request for transfer status for L. Anderson from support role to an on-call firefighter EMT basic?
Correct. So Lisa Anderson currently has a role with support. Her primary function within the department is public safety, as far as public education is concerned. So a lot of the outreach programs for both the schools as well as the senior centers, and other programs like the SALT for seniors and things like that all fall under her purview as the coordinator for education. And she's been doing that since I got here over 2 years ago. And she also held that same position while she was in Granby. And so she has very good experience with it. She's been nominated for Public Educator of the Year in the past and is really recognized in the industry as being good at what she does. Lisa was also a firefighter in the town of Granby before coming back to Southwick. And Lisa has asked if we would consider her as a firefighter once again. And I talked to Lisa about it. And we both agreed that it would be a good transition for her. She's trained, she's certified, so it would be an easy step for us to bring her on board. So the first matter would just be with the support of the select board to to go ahead and appoint her as a firefighter. And her intention is to still hold on to the safe education duties as well, too.
Gentlemen?
Well, I'm not thrilled with this at all, and it's nothing against any of them, only because it's family, and I work with family, and well, right, and Russ works with family. You know, we have our moments. Moglen, you're the smart one, but I did meet with Rich today, and he's assured me if he feels it's not working out right, if there's too much, I don't want to use the word drama, but just it's family. You know how families are. You know how dinner tables are. And Rich assured me if he felt it wasn't going in the right direction, he would put a stop to it. And I believe in Richard, so I'm okay with it. That's what I got.
Well, Mr. Didi just said if he's talked to the deputy chief, and I'm going to go on based on Joe's recommendation, so I'll make that motion to appoint.
Don't throw me under the bus, Russ. All I'm saying is I'm nervous as hell, but you know, Richard talked me off the building. So it's you know how it is with family, and even though you know the chief's the chief, and between the son and now the wife, I wouldn't want to be at his dinner anymore. Maybe the chief's going to want to come stay with us. I don't know, you know, but it's all good. And you know, like I say, Richard feels he's got it under control, and he does. So I will second that motion, Russ, if you made it.
Very well. Roll call vote. Doug Moglen, aye.
Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
So
Very
it is
good.
written, so it's done.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. The second item was to extend the previously appointed or approved provisional positions. So back in the beginning of all of this in March, we quickly realized that we were going to need some additional staffing. So one of the things we did was to put 2 provisional people on board, and that worked out quite well for us. So I would like to have the select board again extend both of the provisional hiring positions for another 120 days. So currently Josh Gerard holds one of the positions as a provisional, and the other was left unfilled after the provisional was brought in as a full-time employee. So we still would have, hopefully Josh would continue in the role. We still have that one spot that is open that I do need to fill.
I'd entertain a motion to authorize a 120-day extension for Josh and a player to be named later.
Joe Didi will make that motion.
Russ Fox will second it.
Doug Moglen, aye.
Joe Didi, aye.
Fox, aye.
The player name later, is there like, is there money involved? Are we trading other teams?
Well,
No.
nothing quite like that. The last hiring pool was coming from the members of the department that met certain criteria. We do still have some members that do fulfill the requirements, so it would just be a matter of whether or not their schedule would allow them to accept the position if they're interested in it, even knowing that it's
Yeah, that's the biggest problem.
So, but it goes both ways. With the provisionals, there's some flexibility on both ends, and it's worked out quite well to this point right now.
Great.
So hopefully continue with that.
Sounds good.
All right. Very good. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you very much. I don't see the chief back yet. Okay.
Who was that?
The fire chief's supposed to come back.
Who called? Is that Russ?
Oh. Just checking on Russ. He's okay over there.
Okay,
I see
yeah,
him here.
Fine.
Yeah, all right. Toilet paper stock just went up.
Oh, good Lord. Why don't we...
Doug, if I could, the chief is logging on as we speak.
Okay.
Perfect.
So I'll just knock out a couple things while he's logging on then. So we're going to recognize payroll warrant 2101 dated 7/7/2020 in the amount of $265,743.18. And a payables warrant number 2012B dated 7/13/2020 in the amount of $4,489,023.73. And a payroll warrant number 2102 dated 7/23/2020 in the amount of $235,605.41. And do we have a motion for the minutes of July 7th?
I'll make a motion for July 7th.
Russ Fox will second it.
Great. Doug Moglen, aye.
Joe DDI.
Russ Fox, aye.
Fantastic. And now the chief's back.
I am back.
Hi, Chief.
Hello.
You have some fire department call force command officer promotions.
Correct. So, if you recall, here last year, Captain Dave Gay and Mike Kennedy both left at different times for different reasons. One for medical issues, another moved out of state down to Connecticut. So that left 2 captains' positions open. So filling those captains' positions would obviously open up coming from lieutenant as well. So we basically have 2 lieutenant and 2 captains' positions open or would it be open? So we began the process typical for fire type of stuff. We had 5 candidates compete or put in for the positions for lieutenant and captain. The started with resume scoring. They submitted the resume based on the job description. Those were scored. They all had to complete 2 fire videos reviewing best practices and writing reports based on those. Myself and the deputy scored those individual reports. And then each had to do an in-person fire scenario scored by neighboring command staff and an in-person employee counseling again scored by the same command staff on a night. So they've had a 4-part process, and unfortunately due to COVID, it's taken us a heck of a lot longer than we wanted it to. But all those scores have been tabulated, and all the candidates did a great job. It was competitive a process, and it was very close. But we'd like to move forward for endorsement of promotions, and if you want, I'll read them off to you.
Please do.
So we'd like to move Lieutenant Michael Ferraccio to captain. We'd like to move Lieutenant Paul Johnson to captain. We'd like to move Private Chris Garvey to lieutenant. And we'd like to move Private Chris Macchio to lieutenant.
Well, that's awesome. I think I remember Garvey coming on not that long ago, right? About 4 or 5 years.
Just when I got it, it was about 4 years ago.
Yeah, wow. And a good guy. Actually, all of these people are fantastic people. So is that by a vote of the fire commissioners that you need to do that? Or is that?
You being the appointing authority, I believe you need to vote, yes.
Would someone like to?
Joe D will make that motion.
Fox will second that motion.
Fantastic. Doug Moglen, aye?
Joe DDI.
Fox, aye.
Well, congratulations to Mike, Paul, Chris, and Mr. Macchio. I think that's awesome.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Excellent. And we also have to vote to authorize the sale of fire engine and rescue unit. Do you have any color to give to us on that?
Red, white.
Winning.
So the new engine 2 is close. Our consultant was in last week. Again, during COVID, it delayed things. So we have our punch list finally together. It's going to go back to New Hampshire for some minor issues and some changing of a couple things. And then that should be back. So we're waiting for the date on that. The old engine 2, we are going to put in the process for its annual maintenance checkup, because we figure that would be a good thing to have when we sell it, and we'll get our money back, twofold on that one easily if someone has a mechanical list of what's right or wrong with the truck. But that should be, I would think, within a month's time, we're ready to go with that. The rescue truck, I guess, would be the only, limbo thing. We're next week, we believe we're meeting with Lieutenant Landis and the dive team and try to see if there's hope for a regional dive team. We've been trying to connect with that individual, and it's been a little slow. But at worst case scenario, I think that truck would make a great dive team truck for our police and / fire if need be. So I don't mind housing it if that's what they need to do. We'll just give police, permission to get in, or we'll help deliver it, whatever it needs to be. We'll work as a team on it. But I think the truck does have a little bit of life left on it for that, and would work well for a dive type of truck.
Okay, so I think we need to take a vote to authorize the sale of at least the engine.
I'll make the motion for the engine, and we'll hold off on the dive truck until you guys figure things out.
Russ Fox will second that.
Doug Moglen, aye.
Joe DDI.
Russ Fox, aye.
Do you know if Carl has a goal in mind for other stuff, and like, are we talking a month out, 2 months out, or what's going on?
You got those two pieces in the back you stare at every day, that beautiful low mileage Mercedes and that mower. So
that's scrap. The Mercedes is scrap. He was supposed to scrap it a while ago. Just no one's taking it because of COVID.
Right. I don't think we have anything else.
It's good to have a goal, so I'll talk to Carl.
Yeah. I mean, certainly, the whole goal, part of the apparatus study, right, and following through on that was we were going to replace, the rescue and the frontline engine with this new vehicle and then replace the ladder with the, obviously Tower 5's already here, so that's great. And the other ladder's already gone. So we followed through on exactly what we said we were going to do. We just need to continue and follow through the rest of the process, right?
And if the rescue truck goes for sale, that's fine. It just is a town asset.
No, I think that there's an interest in having it go over there and replace one. I think the one they have over there is from the early 80s.
That was our one of our first rescue trucks. So
right.
Yeah.
So, correct.
It needs a rescue.
And we own it already. So, yeah.
Very true.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Do we have any other business with you this evening?
I think I'm all set.
Well, great. Well, please extend our congratulations to your new and promoted officers on our behalf.
Oh, yeah. The other thing, with this COVID stuff, it's a little lackluster. But I would, once we get back together, have an official pinning with you folks at a board when we're actually in front of each other.
That would be great.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Given the hour, should we carry the appointments to the next meeting?
I think that's a good idea, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We do have a conflict of interest disclosure acknowledgement for the stormwater coordinator to potentially provide some planning board services in relation to the Sawgrass development. And I think I read it. I don't have any big objections to it. There is an opportunity under the zoning bylaw to hire an outside consultant to review plans and review work done. That would be outside the scope of and being paid for by the developer. And I think the disclosure, I don't want to speak over it, but it had to do with the fact that one of the plans were developed by the former employer of this gentleman, of which he had very little part of, but he wants to get a conflict of interest disclosure acknowledgement. So we're just acknowledging that here. Resolution for Holyoke Soldiers Home as requested by the VFW. Did anybody have a chance to take a look at that and would like to speak to it?
I read, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead, Joe.
I read it. The only thing, there was an issue going back and forth. I think it's not in there is at one point they wanted to name a certain individual in town in it. And I believe that did get pulled out. I didn't think that was proper to do that as far as what this was for. Russ?
All I was going to say, I think this is a great resolution. I know that we lost at least 2 veterans from Southwick, not just one.
Yes.
But this is something that the state needs to address. And I'm certainly behind this 1,000%.
Mr. Moglen?
No objection. Is that a motion? And do you want us to read said?
So Jody will make the motion.
Russ?
Oh, I'm sorry. Absolutely. I'll make that in the form of a motion that we support the resolution as written by the VFW of Southwick.
Joe Didi, second.
Okay. Doug Moglen, aye.
Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
Excellent. Carried unanimously, and we support that. Russ, you're right. I mean, it was a tragedy what happened over there. An absolute tragedy. And a loss to our town and a loss to their family members and everyone that was affected by this. And, you know, we've seen the toll that was taken statewide, but, you know, a large percentage of the numbers in this area are driven off of some of these places, and the Holyoke Soldiers Home leading the number by a wide margin. Okay, we have a sewer abatement for 11 Sefton Drive, and that's normally a book we normally sign. And just give me a second here to get caught up. There it is. And this is for 11 Sefton, and the adjusted amount, so the abatement is $77.67. We need a motion for that.
Joe Didi will make that motion.
As a sewer
Russ
commissioner.
Russ Fox will second it.
Fantastic. Doug Moglen, aye.
Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
Great. And then ratify the Chair Municipal Modernization Act sign off for a fiscal year 20 year-end transfer. So this is to ratify a memo that I signed. This was regarding some urgent fire department air conditioning repairs and heating control issues over there, and it was handled as a year-end transfer under the recently passed Municipal Modernization Act. So it's in the amount of 20 grand. So I do need a motion to, actually I don't think we do. Yeah, we do need a motion for that, please.
Joe Didi makes the motion.
Russ Fox seconds.
Doug Moglen, aye.
Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
Great. And we do have an unfortunate, with a bit of sadness, I think, the motocross announced this past week that there will be no national. It had been delayed, but apparently they're just unable to pull it off given all the restrictions and the pandemic that's going on. So there will be no national this year. They're looking forward to 2021. And, oh, this is an easy one. We have a letter here from a Mr. John Kane, and he's expressing an interest in appointment to the local emergency planning committee as a local business owner.
Was this a softball? Is this a low pitch?
I know. I mean, it's LEPC, right? So
yeah. I'll make that motion. Joe,
there you go. Thank you.
Russ Fox will second it.
Doug Moglen, aye.
Only thing, can we extend it for 2 years?
Yeah, right. I was going to go for 10.
There you go. Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
Excellent. And then we have a donation here for $500 in the memory of Mr. John Torini from Mrs. Torini. And we need a vote to accept that most generous donation to the police gift account.
Joe Didi will make the motion.
Fox will second.
Doug Moglen, aye.
Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
Excellent. And then we have do we want to cover this 2020 Business and Industry Journal ad that was right near the front of the packet?
I think it's a good idea. We were voted by Rita Raves, the #1 community to live in Western Massachusetts. So I think we need to keep our name out in front, and I think we have a lot to offer people. I don't think we need to do the 2 pages like we did. We're past our 250th, plus the 250th committee also as an advertising budget. So I'd entertain, what do you think, Joe? Quarter page?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I'll make a motion for a quarter page and have Carl figure it out.
Okay, that's
Russ Fox, second.
Doug Moglen, aye.
Joe DDI.
Russ Fox, aye.
And let me also put a plug in that the Reader Rave voting is now open. So please make sure that everyone votes as often as it'll let you, so that we can be a repeat winner at the Reader
virtual
Raves and whatever that's going to be.
Yeah.
Now we have we did the minutes, so we have a discharge of lien on 12 Point Grove Road. I believe this was a PVPC thing. Cindy, correct?
Yes, it is.
So
Joe
we just
D will
need,
make the motion.
thank you.
Russ Fox will second it.
Doug Moglen, aye.
Joe DDI.
Fox, aye.
And then old business and dates to remember. Decision on part-time board secretaries and floater fiscal year 21 rates. That can wait till Carl comes back. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Cable contract renewals coming up. I did reply back to the person who had reached out to us about the pride flag, and I offered her the ability for next year to organize something if she wants to and donate a flag to that endeavor. And we'll see where it goes from here, since Pride Month was in June. So this can come off the list. Common victualers and hawkers and peddlers.
Yes, I reached out and got some more information. So basically, they would like to set up the Coward's Farm in the fall. Should there be a pumpkin season? And that's really what this was for. They want to put a little trailer out front through Board of Health, of course. So they're looking for like September 1st till they might even do their Christmas trees. They just don't know right now. So it'd be, I guess, September 1st till it expires December 31st anyway.
Okay.
And that was for
We need to vote on that?
GMB Concessions, LLC. Yes, I'll make the motion to approve the common vic.
Russ Fox will second.
Doug Moglen, aye.
Joe DDI.
Russ Fox, aye.
Did we finally pick a date for the paving before winter
For what?
to go out and visit the paving projects?
We had 3 dates that we were told.
No, but Randy Brown is on vacation in a week. So what I was going to do was just sign up everybody to make it the following Thursday. And try to start with one date to see if everybody can make it.
I couldn't hear you, Cindy.
Thursday, you said?
Yeah, 8:30.
This Thursday?
No.
No.
All right, so
Randy's on vacation.
all right, just email us the date and we'll make it work. Chief of Police, I don't think there's any update on that this week. And does anyone have any knowledge of the water drainage issue at 325, 327 College Highway?
That was the issue that I brought up, Mr. Chairman, that it would just be carried so that we were aware of it.
Okay.
Because of the Claus Anderson.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry. And then the green energy program we can carry to our next meeting, given the hour.
Absolutely.
Any other old business before this board tonight?
I have one thing, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
There was a letter that came to me when I was still chairman that I didn't receive until afterwards from the chairman of the Board of Health, Dr. Asia. It was in regards to a complaint that was filed and Dr. Asia responded to it. And he spoke to me this week and he asked, for a reply from this board. And I told him that I read the letter. I didn't see where he was asking for it, so I apologized if he was waiting for a response. But I believe that this had already gone to the appropriate boards or commissions that needed to review it. So I guess if we could just respond to Dr. Asia that we received the letter and we feel that all necessary action has been taken.
Very well. We will, barring any objection, I don't see any reason why we can't do that. Joe?
That's fine.
Are you talking into an eggplant? What are you doing there?
It's been a rough week. It's been a rough.
Is that like a security blanket?
Either my hearing's getting worse. I didn't bring my hearing aids on. I've never had to. The speaker system let go this morning. So I went to Walmart to buy speakers and told the guy it's for Zoom meetings. He sold me these $20 little things that I can't hear a goddamn thing on them. So here we are. Here we are. It's all good.
They just cut into a minute, like, that.
Cindy, we can barely hear you when you're broken up.
Okay, can you hear me now?
A little better, but you're still broken up.
I just want you to know that Edgewood has decided to close for the summer. Their restaurant.
Yeah.
Until next year. So the restaurant won't be open. Just run little snacks out of the pro shop, I guess.
Right, and that also includes their liquor too, correct? They're no longer selling booze.
Well, I don't know about that. Because
Well, they only could sell liquor in the restaurant. If the restaurant's not open,
Their whole course is part of the serving area. The whole course.
it's part of the serving area.
Yeah.
All the
Usually is
Yeah,
on a golf course.
The whole course.
I guess you could drink everywhere, but I thought this. I got you.
They usually have a golf cart that goes around that can sell booze.
Yeah, you're right.
They all have that. So what probably means is that this probably should be under new business, but okay. They probably need to have somebody from Edgewood come in as a change of manager, correct?
Well, they're going to have to do that, yeah. But normally in the rules and regulations, they request it close or something, they should let us know. But I was notified from Melissa. I figured I'd just let you know about it.
Okay.
Yeah, they got also still serve food, they're serving alcohol.
Right. So we'll have to dig into that. And it's also a seasonal business too. So, they usually close in the winter. They're just closing early because of COVID, I guess. But
yeah,
we'll have to see how that's going to play out. We'll have to reach out to them and see what they're going to do. And Cindy, I keep putting you on mute because we get an echo when you're not. That's all. Take no offense, please. Okay. Joe, do you have any old business?
Can't remember anything.
Okay. New business. We're going to do this select board goals and objectives at the next meeting or in a work session. The only thing that I wanted to mention was that there was, I think we got email on it, but I did see activity on it today, is if we had any thoughts around the new directive that came from the governor today and the ABCC regarding restaurants being able to serve packaged cocktails to go. I personally think it's a long time coming. I think it was something that they should have done a long time ago. But if the board as liquor commissioners have any conditions that they want to put around that, more than what's on the governor's order and the ABCC's order.
It's crazy, right? So I can get a 20-ounce cup of mixed drink and with a lid on it, put it in my car. I'm like, okay.
Well, it has to go in the trunk.
With a straw in it.
It has to go in the trunk and it has to be sealed.
Yeah, good luck with that. So
I know.
I just thought it said no straw. I'm sorry, I'm confused.
It has to be sealed and not have a provision for a straw.
Oh, damn it. Okay.
So
Good,
I mean,
glad you read it.
I know I was talking to people when this pandemic started, and they did it in Texas like the first week, And, you know, some states have already had drive-through liquor, you know, drink lines for years, which that's a little much. But in Texas, they've been doing it. In other states, they've been doing it. You know, and for some of the bars that have now moved to, you know, that are trying to make a go of it with takeout food, you know, the ability to sell a mixed drink where, along with a takeout dinner, I personally don't have an objection to it, as long as it goes with the food and it's not, you know, pull in for an order of 20 cocktails. I don't know. It seems like it has to be bundled with food, but that was with the ABCC rule. I don't see an issue with it.
It is what it is. Westfield's been doing it for quite honestly. So yeah, that's fine.
Russ?
Yeah, I don't have any issue.
So no additional conditions necessary from us? I didn't have any.
I don't think we got time for it. I mean,
right.
Where do we start and where do we end?
Nope. Okay. Other new business, Mr. Didi?
Nope.
You must have had a heck of a day, huh?
That's just been a crazy week, right? No nationals, no 3-county fair. They're just falling. Everything's falling. It's all good.
This year is just a write-off. As far as everything, it's literally a write-off.
Yeah. It sucks.
Mr. Fox?
Chairman, are you going to mention anything about the Back the Blue event that took place in Southwick and the other neighboring communities?
Thank you for bringing it up. I know that you had some folks over at the flower shop. I was at the police station, and there was well over 100 vehicles that came by the police department.
Nice.
I want to also personally thank the Southwick Fire Department. They actually rolled out the ladder and hoisted the American flag hanging up over Depot Street, and then stood out in front of the fire station and the fire truck as the procession went by in support of our police department. So I thought it was a great event, and thank you for mentioning it, because it was, you know, I think it was much appreciated by the police in our town with everything else that's been going on. And, you know, did you have a lot of people over at the shop as well?
We had a good number, you know, very enthusiastic people that brought signs and flags. And so I think it was, we got a lot of beeps and a lot of sirens going off. So that was good.
Awesome. I think it was great. I mean, the event came off very well. It was very well organized. Our police department, you know, obviously supported that as far as blocking some intersections to let them come through. And the event went off without any other ancillary issues, much like the other event that was held in our town also came off with no issues. So I think that's great. Any other new business, Mr. Fox?
No, sir.
Do you think I covered everything here, or did I miss anything? I think we're in good
I think
shape.
you've done a fabulous job.
No, I didn't have enough time to prepare tonight. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn, and I did badly, because that's almost, oh my goodness, an hour and 49 minutes with Carl being gone. I'm never going to hear the end of it.
Yeah, I would agree.
I almost got Mike McMahon to smile.
That is a half a
There it
smile.
goes.
There
All
you
right.
go.
Motion to adjourn, please.
All right, I'll second that. I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Russ Fox will second.
Doug Moglen, aye.
Joe DDI.
Russ Fox, aye.
Be safe, everyone. Have a great night. Thank you.
See ya.